Jalen had never been this far from the trade routes of Seoul. He'd grown up on orbital stations, breathing recycled air, patching old tech, and watching the world from behind frosted glass. People called it survival, but it had never felt like living. So when his contract ended early on Selenth Outpost, and his last payment came in with an unexpected bonus, Jalen did something uncharacteristically bold. He booked passage on a mid-tier freighter to the Galactic Spire Bazaar. The Spire was famous and infamous, depending on who you asked. Built into the shell of a derelict moon, the structure was more than a city, it was a living marketplace stretched across cultures, time zones, and ideologies. Some said you could buy love there. Others said you could lose your soul. Jalen didn't believe either. He was looking for something else, he just didn't know what. The freighter touched down on the outer ring, and the moment the docking clamps hissed open, a wave of heat and scent rushed through the airlock. Jalen stepped out into chaos. Every kind of being he could imagine, and many he couldn't, moved around him, each absorbed in the blur of commerce and color. Lights blinked in a dozen languages. Drones zipped overhead. A neon banner pulsed with the phrase, pleasure, purchase, peace. He hated it instantly. But he kept walking. Section 9, lower tier, companion's quarter, that's where the trader at Selenth had told him to go. He didn't say why, only that if Jalen wanted to see what real sorrow looked like, he should talk to an Inari. At the time, Jalen thought the man was drunk. Now, he wasn't so sure. Section 9 was quieter. Dimmer. The neon lights faded here, replaced by low amber glows and soft atmospheric hums. It was designed for comfort, for control. Even the air smelled cleaner. Stalls lined the sides like mirrored confessionals. Each was occupied by someone, mostly humanoid, mostly beautiful. Their eyes followed him in subtle turns, expressions carefully curated. And then, at the very end, he saw her. Nyari. She sat alone in a high-backed chair, posture straight but not stiff. She wore a deep gray garment that shimmered like oil on water, and her skin, smooth, pale with a faint lavender undertone, looked like it had been carved from moonlight. Her eyes were distant. Distant not in the way of someone distracted, but someone trying not to feel. A small sign above her booth read, Companions for Hire, Rare Species. Gentle, discreet, and adaptive. Beneath it, etched more delicately, Rented Solace for the Discerning Heart. Jalen stopped. He didn't mean to. She didn't move. Then, a voice cut through the air behind him. She's popular, said the vendor, stepping from the side of the booth. Her smile was practiced, slick. You won't find another like her. Pure Inari, untouched by genetic tampering. They don't even manufacture this bloodline anymore. You talk like she's a machine, Jalen said. Aren't we all? The vendor asked with a wink. You looking to rent for the hour or the day? Jalen didn't answer. His gaze stayed fixed on Nyari. She hadn't spoken, hadn't acknowledged either of them, but her presence felt heavier than the stall itself. What's her name? He asked, though the question felt wrong on his tongue. Nyari. Means silent flower in the old tongue. Poetic, huh? Jalen stepped closer to the shimmer field that separated them. Can I speak with her? 50 credits for 5 minutes. Jalen hesitated only a second before transferring the funds from his pad. The shimmer field flickered and allowed him through. Inside, everything was quieter. The walls absorbed sound, and even the light felt slower, dimmer, more respectful. He sat across from her, hands folded in his lap. Unsure what to say. Hello, he offered gently. Nyari blinked. Slowly. Then turned her head toward him, just slightly. You came, she said. You were expecting someone? No, she replied. But you still came. Jalen felt a strange pressure in his chest. I've never met anyone like you. Most haven't. Do you? He fumbled for words. Do you choose to be here? Nyari didn't laugh. Didn't smirk. She only tilted her head slightly, as if the question had broken some ancient etiquette. No one chooses to be a possession. That answer struck deeper than he was ready for. I'm sorry, he said. Why? Because it's wrong. Then you are one of the rare ones. Silence fell between them again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Jalen studied her, not just her beauty, though that was undeniable, but the stillness in her. The way she never broke eye contact. Like she had long stopped being afraid of being seen. How long have you been here? He asked. Long enough to stop counting. Do you want to leave? Her expression didn't change, but something passed through her eyes. I want to remember what it feels like to belong to no one. Jalen sat back. What would it take for you to be free? Nyari gave a soft, humorless laugh. More than you have. Try me. You'd have to buy me. Then I will. This time, she turned her face fully toward him. Her eyes searched his, not with hope, but with weary caution. Many say that. Most don't mean it. I do. Why? Because you're not a thing. And no one should live like this. Nyari paused. Then she whispered, if you try to save me, they'll take everything from you. Then let them. The vendor was amused. You're serious, she said, checking the balance on his payment pad. You think a couple thousand credits will get you one of our premium companions? What's the price? Jalen asked. She leaned in, speaking low, like offering a forbidden deal. 75,000. Plus a data trace wipe. And certification. She's not just a companion, she's a licensed neural empath. Rare. Some clients report dream sharing. You're selling her like she's software. She is better than software, the vendor replied. Jalen clenched his jaw. He didn't have 75,000 credits. He didn't even have 10. But he had skills. And he had connections. I'll get it, he said. I don't care how long it takes. The vendor smirked. Hope you're faster than our next customer. It took Jalen 6 days. 6 days of crawling through back-alley code jobs, fixing illegal surveillance bots, patching neural drains in abandoned cargo hulls, and betting what little he had on rigged datacube races. He slept twice. Ate once. And when he came back, his hands shook from exhaustion, but the credits were real. The vendor scanned his pad and looked genuinely surprised. You're either stupid, she said, or deeply in love. Maybe both. Fine. She's yours. But don't say I didn't warn you. Jalen returned to the stall and stepped through the shimmer field one last time. Nyari looked up. He held out the contract key. You're free. She didn't move. She looked at the key. Then at him. What now? Whatever you want. Nyari stood, slowly. As if testing whether her legs remembered what freedom felt like. When she reached for the key, her hands trembled. No one's ever done this, she whispered. They should have. And if I leave? Then you leave. And if I stay? Then you stay because you want to. Her breath caught. Her lips parted. But she said nothing. Just took his hand. And for the first time since Jalen had met her. Nyari smiled. The first thing Nyari noticed was the silence. Not the absence of sound, there were still voices from the street below, soft whirs of machinery, the distant hum of skylifts, but silence inside herself. Like some invisible weight had been lifted, and now she stood unsure of whether to grieve its absence or celebrate it. Jalen hadn't spoken much on the ride to his apartment. He'd only looked at her once, and it wasn't the way others looked. Not with hunger. Not with curiosity. It was a look that asked, what do you need? Nyari didn't know. She was free now. Legally. Contractually. But inside her mind, the bars hadn't yet opened. Her body still moved as though she were being watched. Her steps measured, polite, distant. "We're here," Jalen said as the lift door opened to a quiet corridor lit in soft blues and amber. His apartment was modest, a two-room flat carved into the side of a lower spire housing dome. One wall was entirely glass, showing the curve of the trade district lights. Everything inside felt calm. Unforced. Real. "It's not much," Jalen added, setting down a small bag. "But you're safe here." Safe. What a strange word. Nyari stepped inside slowly, half expecting a trap door or a command barked from behind her. But nothing happened. Jalen didn't follow her too closely. Didn't touch her. Didn't tell her where to sit. He just waited. She wandered toward the window. Her hand rested on the cold pane, eyes following a ship as it passed into the clouds above the skyline. Something inside her stirred, something ancient. Longing. "How long do I stay here?" she asked quietly. Jalen looked up from a small kitchenette console. "As long as you want." "I don't understand what that means." "It means no one's going to make you leave. Or stay." She turned to him, unsure if she should sit, or stand, or ask permission. "What do you want me to do?" "Whatever you want." Again, the words sounded strange. Empty. Not because they weren't sincere, but because she didn't know how to answer. Wanting was a language she had never been taught. "Can I sit here?" She gestured to the edge of the couch. Jalen smiled gently. "You don't have to ask." She nodded. Saturday, her hands folded in her lap like they always did. She didn't know what to do with them otherwise. He came over and handed her a glass of water. She took it, staring into the reflection on its surface. Her face looked unfamiliar. Softer somehow. Freer. And yet, she didn't trust it. "Thank you," she said, her voice small. They sat in silence for a while. Then Jalen spoke again. "I didn't bring you here because I expected anything." "Then why?" "Because no one else did. And because you looked like someone who shouldn't be invisible." That made her look up. "I don't know how to be seen," she admitted. "Then we'll take our time." The days that followed were both gentle and disorienting. Jalen gave Nyari space, real space. Physical, emotional. He didn't hover. He didn't try to fix her. He simply made sure she had access to food, warmth, clean clothes, and books. Books became her anchor. He had a small shelf filled with stories from Earth, paper books, their spines cracked with use. Nyari had never held a book in her hands before. Everything in the market had been digital, transactional. Books felt intimate. Like someone had put their soul on paper. She read slowly at first. Then obsessively. They taught her about humans, what they feared, what they dreamed, what they laughed at. One night, after she had finished a short novel about two lovers who met in wartime and sent letters through enemy lines, she asked him, "Are all human hearts so desperate for connection?" He looked up from where he sat across the room. "I think every heart is. Even yours. Especially mine." Nyari didn't know how to answer that. But she didn't stop thinking about it. Jalen worked long hours during the day, contract repairs, system diagnostics, deep structure maintenance on outer shell rigs. Nyari remained behind, never locked in, never forbidden from leaving. Yet, she didn't step outside. Freedom was a large, terrifying door. And she still wasn't sure what lay beyond it. Instead, she cleaned the small space. Not because he asked her to, but because she didn't know what else to do. She reorganized his cabinets. Folded his clothes. Memorized the shapes of his tools. Tried to understand the world through his things. One afternoon, she found a photo. It was old, wrinkled, a printed image, rare in this galaxy. Jalen was younger, standing with another human. A woman. Darker skin. A soft, tired smile. They looked close. When Jalen came home, Nyari asked, "Who is she?" His smile faltered for a moment. "My sister," he said softly. "Nyala. Where is she now?" "Gone." "I'm sorry." He shook his head. "It was a long time ago." "You don't have to be sorry." "Grief doesn't keep time," Nyari said, more to herself than him. They stood in silence for a moment. "You sound like someone who's grieved," he said. "I don't know what I've done," she replied. "But something inside me feels like it's always bleeding." One morning, Nyari tried to cook. She had watched Jalen prepare food a dozen times. He moved without thinking, slicing and mixing with practiced motions. She imitated what she remembered: eggs, a flatbread, something green. The pan hissed loudly when the oil touched it. She startled, nearly dropping the handle. Jalen rushed out of his room at the noise. Nyari stood frozen, one hand gripping the counter, the other trembling slightly. "Hey," he said gently. "It's okay. I thought you'd be angry." "Why?" "Because I touched your things." He stepped closer, slowly. "Nyari, nothing here is off limits to you. Not the food. Not the space. Not me." Her eyes searched his. "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything," he said. "You just have to live." "How do people do that?" "Badly, most days," he said with a laugh. She almost smiled. That night, she had a dream. It wasn't like the ones the market had forced her to simulate for clients. It was real. She stood on a shore, watching water stretch into a violet sky. Someone called her name, but not the name they gave her. A name from long ago. She turned to look, but saw no one. Only stars, falling slow like ash. When she woke, her face was wet. She had cried. Without anyone commanding her to. A week later, Jalen found her sitting on the roof of the apartment building. She sat cross-legged, facing the endless lights of the city dome, her face lifted toward the artificial sky. He joined her quietly. "First time out of the apartment?" he asked. "Yes." "Why now?" "Because I realized the door wasn't locked." He smiled. "It never was." "I know that now," she whispered. They sat together, knees barely touching. "Do you remember your home?" he asked. Nyari was silent for a long time. "I remember water," she said. "And light. And a song that came from the trees when the wind moved right. Do you want to go back?" "It's gone," she said simply. "Burned. Sold. Dissected. I'm sorry." She shook her head. "Don't be. You gave me something else." "What?" She turned to face him, eyes full of quiet gravity. "The chance to become someone." One evening, as the lights dimmed and the city curled into a lull, Jalen sat across from her, holding a mug of warm spiced tea. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Nyari nodded. "Do you want to stay here? With me?" Her breath caught. "You mean, live here? In this place?" "Yes. But only if it's your choice. You're not asking me to be yours." "No," he said. "I'm asking you to be, with me. If you want. Not because you owe me. Not because I freed you. But because we found something here that maybe matters." She looked down. Her hands trembled again. But this time, it wasn't from fear. "I don't know if I'm ready to be loved," she said softly. "That's okay," he replied. "I can wait." "You'll wait?" "Forever, if I have to." Nyari leaned forward. Her hand reached across the table. It hovered near his, unsure, uncertain. But Jalen didn't move. He let her decide. And when her fingers finally brushed his, 1,000 years of sorrow cracked. Just a little. 3 weeks had passed since Nyari touched Jalen's hand for the first time. It had been a quiet gesture, but it lingered like gravity in the air between them. They didn't talk about it. They didn't need to. Something delicate and wordless had begun to grow. Jalen moved through his days with careful intention, still working long hours, still returning home with calloused fingers and a tired smile. Nyari remained at the apartment, reading, learning, watching the world from the roof. Sometimes they'd sit together and not speak at all. Sometimes they'd speak without ever looking at each other. Each day, she felt more alive. Not whole, not yet, but awake. And then, it changed. It began with a sound. A knock. Soft. Deliberate. They were eating dinner, something Jalen had cooked from one of her homeworld's reconstructed recipes. Nyari had taken the first bite, her eyes widening with something close to joy, when the knock came again. 3 taps. Pause. Then 2. Jalen stood slowly. He walked to the door, not unlocking it yet. "Who is it?" he asked. No answer. Nyari had gone still. A shadow passed across her face. She stood, slowly, hands clenched at her sides. "Nyari," Jalen turned toward her. "Do you?" "Don't open it," she whispered. The lock hissed open. Not from Jalen's hand. From the outside. The door creaked, and into the apartment stepped a tall figure, robed in ash-gray cloth. His face was angular, marked with metallic implants along one cheekbone and a string of beads down the left side of his neck. Eyes like shattered glass caught the room. Nyari's voice broke. "Varric." The name came like thunder. Jalen moved instinctively in front of her. Varric smiled. "I wondered if you'd hide behind someone," he said, stepping forward with the slow grace of someone used to being feared. "But I suppose that's what you're best at, surviving off borrowed kindness." Jalen didn't move. "Who are you?" Varric ignored him. "Nyari," he said, voice quiet now, intimate and cruel. "You broke contract. You know what that means." "She didn't break anything," Jalen said. "She was released. Legally. I paid." "You paid the stall vendor," Varric interrupted, finally turning his gaze on Jalen. "And she had no right to sell what she didn't own." Jalen's pulse quickened. "I have documentation." "I have." "You have nothing," Varric said. "And soon, you'll be lucky to keep your life." Nyari stepped forward then. Her voice was steel wrapped in breath. "What do you want?" Varric smiled again. "You know what I want. I'm not going back." "Then you'll run again. And again. And again. Do you think this little life he gave you is real?" He gestured to the apartment. "This is a pause, not a future." Jalen took a step closer to him. "If you try to take her." "What?" Varric said, almost laughing. "You'll fight me? Bleed for her?" "Yes," Jalen said simply. Varric's expression flickered. Only for a moment. Then he turned to Nyari. "You have one cycle. 24 hours. After that, I won't ask again." And just like that, he was gone. The door hissed closed. The silence that followed was the kind that comes after something ancient has cracked. Jalen turned to her. "Nyari, who is he?" She sank into the couch. Her whole body trembled. Not from fear. Not entirely. From rage. "Varric," she said softly, "was the original holder of my bond. He sold me into the market system years ago. Said it was temporary. Said I would come back. You trusted him." "I was 13. Jalen sat beside her. She wrapped her arms around herself like armor. He's a broker now. High tier. Makes his credits by selling people like me to corporate collectors. He must have tracked me through the contract ID. But I paid for your release. Legally. The market is only legal if you obey it. They don't care about law. They care about profit. If Varric thinks he owns me, he'll find a way to make it true. Jalen's jaw clenched. We'll leave. Nyari looked at him, startled. We'll leave this system. I have a contact, Sova. She works in deep lanes. No tracking. She owes me. We can vanish. Start over. You'd give up your life here. My life is with you. Her eyes filled. Jalen, she whispered. You don't know what this means. I do. She reached for his hand. And this time, she didn't hesitate. Sova was a smuggler. And brilliant. And deeply unimpressed with Jalen's plan. You want to fake ident tags, scrub 2 DNA profiles, forge release papers, and get off-world under a bounty alert, she said, raising an eyebrow. You owe me a drink, not a life debt. I saved your brother's neural core when the TechNet virus hit, Jalen said calmly. Sova grinned. I always hated owing you. She led them to the underdocks, places where the Spire's rules frayed and shadows made good friends. Old transport hulls rusted on launch arms. Stars bled faintly through the atmosphere dome. Nyari said little. She walked closely beside Jalen, eyes constantly scanning. When we leave, she said quietly, we don't come back. Do you want to come back? He asked. No, she replied. But I want to know we could, if we wanted. Jalen understood. Freedom wasn't just escape. It was return. They boarded an unmarked vessel bound for the outer fringe. The ship was barely operational, its walls humming with barely contained power surges. But it flew. As they left the planet's gravity well, Nyari leaned against the viewing panel. It's beautiful, she murmured. Jalen stood beside her. The stars looked softer here. Less sharp. When I was in the stall, she said, I used to imagine what space felt like. Not just the view. But the silence. And it's louder than I expected. Why? Because for the first time, no one owns my silence. They watched the stars for a long time. Then Jalen asked, where should we go? Nyari didn't answer immediately. Then, somewhere with water. And wind. And no one who knows my name. Then we'll choose a new one. She smiled. But peace never comes easy. On the third night in transit, an alert flared on the NAV display. Tracking beacon. The ship had been tagged. How? Jalen asked, scanning the comms. The food shipment, Sova growled. Damn it. They must have laced the crate sensor. Smart. Subtle. Nyari stood very still. Can they reach us? If they already pinged our location, we've got hours. Maybe less. Sova looked at Jalen. You still want to run? Jalen looked at Nyari. She met his gaze without fear. No, he said. I want to end it. They docked at a mining satellite just off Axis 11, abandoned for years, drifting but with enough systems to light up a tracker and set a trap. Sova stayed aboard. Nyari and Jalen hid inside the satellite's main chamber, its core pulsing faintly with blue energy. When Varric's ship landed, Jalen stepped out first. Nyari waited in the shadows. Varric emerged, flanked by 2 guards. You're persistent, he said. You're a thief, Jalen replied. She was never yours to take. She was never yours to sell. Varric smirked. I can make this painless. So can I. Then Nyari stepped into the light. Varric's eyes narrowed. So, he said, you chose him. No, she said. I chose me. Then she lifted the data shard in her hand, the one Sova had given her. Activated. A blast of static and light shot into the air. The guard staggered. Varric turned. Too late. Jalen tackled him. The fight was short. Bloody. Quiet. When it was over, Varric lay on the floor, stunned but alive. Nyari stood over him. You do not own me, she said. He said nothing. You never did. They left him alive. Barely. Sova scrubbed the ship. The beacon was gone. The IDs clean. They flew again. This time, for real. On the 5th day, they reached a small moon ring around a gas giant. Uninhabited, mostly. But with water. Wind. Silence. Nyari stood on the ridge beside a lake and let the breeze move through her hair. Jalen came up behind her. She didn't turn. I keep waiting for it to feel fake, she said. Does it? No. He stood beside her. What do we do now, she asked. Anything. She nodded. Then looked at him. And for the first time. She kissed him. Not as gratitude. Not as repayment. But as a woman choosing to be with someone. Because she wanted to. Because she was free. The lake was silent when the sun dipped past the edge of the cliffs. The water didn't ripple unless the wind moved it, and the wind didn't move unless Nyari did. She stood barefoot on the shore, the damp earth cool beneath her feet. Behind her, their temporary shelter, half metal, half stone, sat quiet, humming faintly with solar power. Birds chirped, distant and cautious. Jalen was inside, working on the filtration rig. But Nyari was not inside. Not anymore. She had been outside for almost an hour. Watching. Waiting. Breathing. The air here tasted like moss and salt. There were no neon signs. No shimmer fields. No price tags. No past. And yet, she couldn't stop thinking about the silence. Not the good kind. Not the silence that comforted her when Jalen read beside her, or when they lay in the dark after long conversations that drifted into sleep. This was a silence that pressed against her chest. A silence filled with questions. Who am I now? Who am I to him? Who is he without saving me? They had arrived a month ago. The moon ring had no name. It was listed in the old systems as D-31 Mephora, but neither of them liked the sound of it. Jalen started calling it Loan, after a childhood story about a planet where people whispered their names into the wind, and the wind remembered them. Nyari liked that. It felt honest. Like the place was still learning what it meant to be a home. At first, everything felt like wonder. They slept beneath a glass skylight and watched 2 stars pass overhead, one red and one pale gold. They hunted for food in the shallows and built meals from preserved root packs and local herbs. They touched without hesitation. They kissed like they were still learning the shape of each other's faces. But then came the mornings where Nyari woke with her heart racing. Not because she feared Varric, or the market, or the past. But because of what came next. She didn't know how to build a life that didn't begin with survival. And Jalen was good. Too good. Always ready to ask how she felt. Always willing to give her space. Always patient. She loved him for it. But part of her began to wonder, was he still holding her because he wanted her, or because he felt responsible? One night, she asked him. They were sitting by the fire. The air was cold. Nyari wrapped herself in a shawl he had stitched from old ship blankets. She had just finished reading a passage from one of the Earth books he'd given her, something about constellations and ancient love stories. Then the question came, quiet and sharp. Why do you stay with me? Jalen blinked. turned slowly to look at her. Because I love you. Or because you freed me. He frowned. What do you mean? You gave me my life back, she said. And I'm grateful. Truly. But that doesn't mean we're supposed to build a life together. Jalen put the book down. The fire crackled between them. Do you think I pity you? I think, maybe you think I need you more than I do. His gaze didn't soften. But it didn't harden either. Maybe I do think that, he admitted. Not because I think you're weak. But because sometimes you still look like you're waiting to disappear. Her throat tightened. And maybe I am waiting, she said. They didn't speak for a while. Then Jalen added, I don't want to be a cage, Nyari. Even a beautiful one. She nodded slowly. I know. That night, she didn't sleep beside him. She went outside again, wrapped in silence, heart heavy with questions she had never let herself ask. In the early morning, before the stars had even faded, she made her decision. She would leave. Not because she didn't love him. But because she had never been alone. Not truly. Not freely. And if her love for him was real, it would remain even after distance. It would either grow or fade, but it would not be chained to obligation. She left a note on the pillow, written in the same language she had spoken as a child. It translated to one phrase. To know myself, I must walk alone. Jalen found the note before sunrise. He didn't panic. Didn't chase. He stood by the window, reading her words again and again, until the stars blurred in his eyes. And then, he let her go. Nyari didn't take much with her. A blanket. Dried fruit. A copy of the Earth book. Her name. She walked for 4 days. Lowen's terrain was wild and uneven, mountains on one side, river valleys on the other. She passed ancient trees with silver bark and birds that sang in 3 tones at once. She slept in caves. Listened to the wind. Stared at the sky until it felt like it belonged to her. And for the first time, truly, she began to feel herself rise to the surface. Not the companion she had been forced to be. Not the frightened girl hiding behind Jalen. Not the reflection she'd studied in glass walls, waiting to be chosen. But Nyari. Only Nyari. She remembered stories her mother told her in her first language, before the fire, before Varric. She sang to the water. She screamed into the wind. She wept. And then she stopped weeping. On the 15th night, she found a valley. It was small, surrounded by tall cliffs that caught the sunrise in a ring of golden light. There was a pool in the center, clear and cold, fed by an underground spring. She stayed. Built a shelter. Gathered roots. Watched the sky for signs of Jalen. But he never came. Because he knew not to. And that meant everything. On the 22nd day, she carved a line in the stone by the spring. A mark of survival. One mark for each day she lived on her own terms. Each day, she asked herself a single question. Do I want to go back? And each time, the answer changed just a little. Not because she needed to. Not because she was afraid of the silence anymore. But because the memory of Jalen was no longer wrapped in debt. It was wrapped in warmth. In laughter. In the sound of his breath beside her in the dark. And more than anything, she wanted to tell him that she had chosen him. Not because he saved her. Not because he waited. But because she had walked away. And still wanted to return. She came back on the 29th day. Jalen was on the roof, working on the old comms relay. The wind blew harder than usual, dust kicking around the edge of the solar rig. He didn't hear her approach. So when she said his name, he flinched. Then turned. Eyes wide. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. She walked up to him, her body dust-covered, her eyes bright with something wild and whole. I'm not yours, she said. I know. And you're not mine. He nodded. But I still want to build something with you. Jalen smiled, slow and wide. Not a cage, she added. Never. Not even a house. What then? She reached out. Touched his chest, just over his heart. A place, she said. A space. Where we're not because of each other, but with each other. He rested his forehead against hers. Welcome home, he whispered. That night, they didn't speak much. They just lay on the rooftop, hands linked, staring up at the stars. And this time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was light. Like gravity had let go.